Hey, good morning. It is Bev. This is the Bev D Show. It is June 27th, 2019. It is 7:10 a.m. So good morning. Here we are. Ecology Thursday. I'm pretty excited about it. Pretty happy to be on this side of the grass. Wake up every day. Thank God for giving me another chance, another few minutes. Who knows when our life will change and or our life will cease. We just don't know. So, you got to kind of get that sense of urgency within you. I know that lately it seems like my bed has been winning when it comes to getting up in the morning, and I'm not quite sure why. So even when I was sleeping, I don't think I was sleeping all that well. Got a lot on my mind, and sometimes we allow that to get to us smack dab in the middle of the night when there's really nothing you can do about it anyway. So I don't know why we do that to ourselves. You wake up and it might be just a normal situation where, you just wake up. Maybe you got to go to the bathroom. Maybe got to roll over and get comfortable again. But man, if you're up more than about 30 seconds, you can really start letting your mind get the best of you, and you start thinking about those things you need to be doing or that you didn't do or that you are really pressing on your mind and your soul to get done. And really, 2:32 in the morning, 3:14, those are just not the times that you're going to be most productive. Although I do have a couple of theories about it. When I wake up like that, I really am wide awake. And so I'm a writer, and I love to write stories and poetry and all that sort of thing. So I often wonder if I would just tap into that and allow it to happen. Maybe something really creative could come from that. Some very famous people have said that that's exactly what they do. Some of the folks that I follow, and I have a lot of mentors. They don't know they are my mentor, but there's the Inky Johnsons, the Tony Robbins, the Brian Tracy's of the world that I read and soak in so much of what they have to say. And they actually have pulled me out of some pretty big slumps. And if you don't know these people, you might want to look them up. Look up their videos, look up their books. And even if you take a few sentences away each day, sometimes I think that that's when our soul is truly waking us up. And if I've got all that worry and angst in the middle of the night, then when I am awake, I better address those things and make myself a little to-do list and get it taken care of. So when I talk about on this show, yesterday was Wednesday with Todd. It's usually Tuesdays with Todd. Todd is my nephew. He would be my brother's son if you are a new listener to the show. And my brother passed away years ago. And his son, who is a mature adult, he may not like that, but he is adulting these days. He has been through quite a bit. So I look to him for inspiration. He is not only in recovery or recovering from alcohol and substance abuse. He is an inspiration to many. He also, in his spare time, not so spare time, I think he's a pretty busy guy, but he goes out and he speaks to groups, and he's turned himself into quite the little rock that people often lean on. And Todd and I, when we get on these, he calls into the show, he's my guest, kind of like a little co-host on that day, but we talk about things that, we recommend or things that have gotten us through tough spots and things like that, but that doesn't mean that you might not slip back into. So they say that the biggest thing is when you're in recovery for addiction, you take it 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. And myself included, not in the substance abuse program, but there was a few years where I call it my mental. I mentally abused myself through blame, shame, guilt, woulda, coulda, shouldas. and really had to come out of that and realize that those were times that I was harboring and coveting my past and couldn't move forward. It looked like I was, but truly I wasn't. And I was kind of keeping those things close to my vest. First of all, didn't want anyone to know my problems, so I harbored that. And then it looked like, I might react instead of act, and do things in more of a responsive way, which is unhealthy. And that's because, just kind of hanging on to some of that luggage and needed to unpack and get some of those things out of there and sort them out and put them in different places and say, okay, I learned that from that mistake and I learned that from that experience. But we can't hang on to that. And I titled today's I am a sales trainer and recruiter. And again, like I said, I'm a writer, and I titled today's show talking about picking up the phone. And it's not the first time I've talked about this, and I talk about it in two platforms. One, being in the sales arena, pick up the phone. Obviously, that's where your money will come from. By sharing what you do, your service, your product, having good business conversations with other business people, as well as picking up the phone if you are having any of those kind of feelings I was just talking about. What happens when we have those feelings is that we come into a place of isolation, and we think no one will understand. No one will. I don't want people to know my private life. I don't want people to know some of the things that I've been through. And when we do that, we are defying exactly what the universe breeds on. BREEDS, breeds on. And what I mean by that is when you share a problem and you pick up the phone, or maybe you talk to an old friend or a relative, and just own it and just get those feelings out in the universe, you suddenly are sharing you. You're sharing that problem, and it's not all yours anymore. We are willing to share so many things. We're givers. We might share food. We might share shelter. And we have no problem doing that. But when it comes to ourselves, it's really hard sometimes, especially when we're in that place. And that's not an unsafe place. That's not a safe place to have your brain. So, you need to kind of sort through those things sometimes. And I started taking chances. And I started sharing my life with people that I thought I could trust. And I picked just a few select people. And sure enough, it bit me in the ass. Sure enough, one of the people that I shared with took it upon themselves to discuss some of the things that I had shared with them. And what it did, of course, it fueled a fire in me. And I was like, see, world, I told you I shouldn't have told anybody. And now my thoughts and my feelings are out there. And one of the biggest things and the hardest things is that it let people know I am not invincible, that I am normal and human. And while I know how to find positive in every situation, positive in every day, when I'm out there doing my thing, but get me alone and everything would settle in. And so I didn't want people to know that, hey, here's Bev, she can fall apart too. Well, it not only was that I shared it with one person, now this one person did what human beings do and shared it with, the rest of the chickens on the farm. And everybody was clucking and talking about this situation. And one led to the other. And all of a sudden, I just threw my hands up and I said, so what? There was just this one day I fought. I was so mad. And I fought and I fought and I fought. And I said, you had no right doing that, all of the things that you would. And while people shouldn't do that, they just can't help themselves. They do. but I trusted, I trusted the wrong person. But what it did, and I do believe in God, and I do believe in the spirits and all of God's helpers, and He puts people in our lives and little messengers and little listeners in our lives for certain reasons. He showed me, and He showed me that, wow, you've been harboring this for so long. Here, take that. Now, it didn't just go to one person, it went to, say, 12. And then those 12 get to, and it's like all of a sudden you realize, and you're like, who cares if that's what they choose to talk about? That's on them to be untrusting and being out there talking about something so sacred and special. I mean, I had, sat across the table with them in an intimate little setting and said, okay, here's what happened. And then all of a sudden none of it matters anymore. But you see it going on all around us all the time. So what I'm saying is, I talked about that sales piece of picking up the phone. I don't worry about the act of picking up the phone and sharing your information. People are going to know it anyways, and here's why. Because if you hold in all of those feelings or experiences or things that have happened to you that, to be honest with you, are making you what you are on that day. So I am a person that does absolutely try and find the positive in every situation. But that was getting to that, Bev. The harboring of what had happened in my past and that sort of thing. And so that was getting to me. And so then I wasn't me anyway. I wasn't able to be the person that I wanted to be, because I was allowing the woulda, coulda, shouldas, blame, shame, guilt. That was what was really operating inside me every day. And that is not who I wanted to be. And so even in those wee hours of the morning, when I still to this day wake up, I can think about that stuff and I just have to counter it. Well, I can't pick up the phone in the middle of the night, but I certainly can, we have different mediums in which we can reach out to people now. And it's almost like a confession, like, oh my God, my dear friend, my best friend, or, my boyfriend or whomever, I let that get to me again. And it's almost like somebody, whether you like it or not, I equate it to somebody taking a drink when they shouldn't, or use when they shouldn't. They were fine and everything was good, and then something happened or some weak moment happened, and sure enough, there you are. You're in my case, it's detrimental to allow your brain to do that to yourself. So I encourage you, let it out. People want to be so private. Why? It makes you relatable. It makes people understand. It helps you to understand. And yet at the same time, people do this isolation thing and they hold it inside, and it's killing them. And maybe not the kind that puts you 6 feet under, but you are certainly not living your best life. You are certainly not living a healthy life. I promise you, if you share that situation, if you pick up that phone and you say, hey, I just need to talk to somebody about this. You find yourself in a situation where you aren't in isolation. You're not alone. And in my opinion, there is way too much of that out there. And that is what puts people behind their keyboards, behind their cell phones or their iPhone and the mobile this and mobile that and all this stuff. And they sit there and they're on their sofas and they're just screaming out to the world saying the most, if you want an education of what's going on in this world, look in the comments section of different social media postings. It is concerning. But yet at the same time, where I am concerned